and welcome back to Lessons from Living. Not long ago, I was listening to an interview where the guest, a man in his 80s, was asked what had changed the most over the course of his lifetime. His answer was simple, but really profound. The loss of civility, the way we treat each other. And I couldn't agree more. We live in a world that's faster, louder, and more connected than ever before. But in the process, we seem to have forgotten some of the simple courtesies that once defined how we spoke to each other, interacted, and even disagreed. Civility is defined as the ability to engage others with respect and dignity, even in the face of differences or disagreement. I was reminded of this recently while reading Pride and Prejudice. Now, the people in Jane Austen's world were far from perfect. The title itself reminds us of that. But what struck me was the care they took in their interactions. Boys and girls bowed or curtsied when greeting each other. People used last names with Mr., Miss, or Mrs. to show respect. Children addressed their parents with formality and deference. Even when characters disagreed, they did so with a degree of restraint. Compare that to today, where heated arguments erupt online between total strangers in a matter of seconds. Of course, I'm not saying we need to return to 19th century manners wholesale, but there's something refreshing, even hopeful, about a time when civility was expected. So where do we see a loss of civility today? Let me share a few areas where I've noticed it. How about language? You know, not long ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop just working away, and I couldn't help but overhear a group of teenagers at the next table. Every other word out of their mouths was some kind of curse word. And here's the thing, they weren't even angry. They were laughing, joking, just talking the way friends do. But the language was so coarse, so heavy, and it struck me. They weren't using profanity for emphasis anymore. It had just become normal speech to them. And I thought, what happens when respect and refinement vanish, even from our everyday conversations? We don't even notice that we're lowering the standard. I've been watching a little of Bill Maher's show recently. Even though I disagree with him on about 90% of his positions, I think he's funny. And I consider him to be a cultural commentator or thought leader today. But here's the thing. Like a lot of comedians, he resorts to harsh language to make a point. But is that necessary? Does being profane actually make your point stronger or just louder and more obnoxious? I would hope that a cultural thought leader could actually lead in his ability to make a point on the strength of his argument instead of using profanity as a crutch. In our younger generation, I mentioned kids earlier and how the bar has lowered on the language they use to converse with each other. Another area I see deterioration in younger generations are just general manners. I noticed, particularly in my younger children's friends, that they had not been taught to treat adults with common respect. There were instances when they would get into my car or walk into my house without recognizing my presence. Yoo-hoo! I'm standing here. They wouldn't say hello. They wouldn't introduce themselves. This blew me away and caused me to remind my own kids that they better be acknowledging the presence of adults around them. They better be introducing themselves to adults in their presence whom they don't know. and that I expected them to at least attempt to include adults in their conversations when adults were present. I don't know what is going on there. This is basic common decency acted out. In our politics, public debate has become pretty toxic. Political opponents are treated as enemies rather than fellow citizens with different perspectives. If we could all disagree respectfully instead of demonizing one another, it would go a long way toward restoring overall civility. How about social media? I'm sure you all see this frequently. Platforms that could have been used for dialogue are now battlegrounds. Behind the anonymity of a screen, people say things they would never say face to face. Even in everyday interactions, have you noticed how rare it is to hear please and thank you in public? Or how often drivers respond to one another with anger instead of patience? Even in the smallest courtesies, they seem to be fading and disappearing. And I can't help but smile at the contrast. In Jane Austen's time, people literally bowed or curtsied as a way of saying, I see you, I respect you. Can you imagine what traffic would be like if we treated each other that way at a stoplight? Instead of honking and yelling, a little nod of respect. What a different world that would be. So why does this matter? Some might argue, well, times change. Language changes. Culture evolves. And that's true. But civility isn't about outdated customs. It's about something deeper. Civility is about dignity. It's about recognizing the humanity of the person across from us, even when we disagree. It's about making space for dialogue instead of shutting it down with insults. When we lose civility, we lose connection. We lose the ability to work together. And in the long run, we even lose hope because cynicism becomes commonplace. Think about it. Incivility in politics erodes trust in our leaders and institutions. In families, incivility leads to fractured relationships, bitterness, estrangement. In everyday life, it creates a culture of impatience, anger, suspicion. On the other hand, civility is contagious. When one person chooses to be kind, respectful, patient, it often diffuses tension and sets a new tone. So how do we bring civility back? Let me suggest a few steps. What if we mind our words? What if we choose to elevate our speech, not lower it? Words have power. Choosing respect, even when it's not fashionable, can shift an entire conversation. What if we practice listening? Civility requires humility. Instead of listening to get our answer back, to respond, what if we listen to understand? How about modeling for the next generation? Children learn from what they see. If they hear us speaking respectfully, even when we disagree, they'll carry that forward. And I beg you, if you are raising children, teach them good manners. Teach them to treat others with courtesy. This is so rare now that they will stand out to all people around them, but particularly to teachers, professors, and future employers. And if you don't think that someone who is interviewing your child for a future job will not consider their manners or lack thereof, you are gravely mistaken. Teach your children. What if we learn to disagree better? We don't have to agree on everything, but we can disagree without tearing each other down. What if we brought back courtesy, simple things like saying thank you, holding the door, greeting people warmly? These may feel small, but they're building blocks of a more civil society. Friends, civility may feel old-fashioned, but I truly believe it's timeless. Our culture desperately needs people willing to model it, not with perfection, but with intention. It starts in our homes. It continues in our workplaces and communities, and it spreads one interaction at a time. So here's my challenge for you this week. In one conversation, maybe even one that feels tense, feels like it could get a little chippy, choose civility. Slow down. Take a breath. Speak kindly. Show respect. See what happens. Because when we treat each other with dignity, we not only restore civility, we restore hope and a better, stronger civilization. Thanks so much for listening to Lessons from Living. If this episode inspired you, gave you a new perspective, or just made you think, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Reviews help other people discover the show, and they help me understand what resonates most with you. Even just a few words about what you enjoyed or what spoke to you makes a big difference. Your support means the world, and it helps me keep sharing stories and lessons that can inspire more people to live meaningful lives. So I thank you. I'm so grateful for you. Okay, we'll leave today with the words of Deborah King. Civility is the art and act of caring for others. Today, let's act to restore a little civility in our world. Go out and make it a great day.